happened with all of the demonstrations that happened for October 22nd around Ferguson. And as everyone knows, that this was part of the National Day of Action around police brutality around the country. Ready for me? I'm going to probably sit here and show us pictures. But there's discrepancy of whether or not, we know that's over 50. Some people have said there's about 90 different actions happened in different places on college campuses, in different cities. But I think the main thing that I want to just raise is what's going on in Ferguson itself right now. As people know, you know, as we've talked about over and over again, is the understanding about how the state doesn't want to do anything at all, you know, has no interest in the needs of people. It's about profit. It is about, you know, securing its this, you know, itself for it to make wreak as much havoc on working class people as possible. So again, when we talk about the so-called justice system, and, you know, with love and respect for folks that are like going to the Department of Justice and filing civil suits and all of that, the understanding that this grand jury hearing in Ferguson is going to possibly indict the cops, again, that we all are holding our breath sort of in this way of sort of like, well, you know, it's never happened. We know that it's not happened in most cases around police brutality, that it doesn't matter if there's videotape. It doesn't matter how many people have come forward, or how, you know, that it happens in broad daylight in front of communities. It's that they don't want to, in any way, shape, or form, indict, you know, their armed body of men, you know, against the workers. And that, I think this is the piece of it. So what has happened in this week around Ferguson is, one, there is all of a sudden an autopsy report that says, leaked. I mean, this is even something too. This is a secret grand jury, right? This is, I've lost count, because first it was leaked on Twitter, like almost 3 weeks ago on Twitter, where someone who was on the grand jury tweeted to their friend, just, you know, again, they're supposed to be sequestered somewhere, but they just put out a tweet about, like, you know, whether or not we're thinking that we're probably not going to convict. Went out on Twitter almost 3 weeks ago, and folks were like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. Really? And so, you know, that then there was the understanding of then, you know, that there was going to be, they were going to come back and maybe discount this entire jury. But it's gone on. The process still, even after that major thing happened on Twitter that everyone reported about, they're still going with the same jury. So now there's an autopsy report. This is this week. I mean, I've lost track of how many things have been leaked. But at this point, over the last couple days, it's about whether or not Mike Brown was close up. And I want to just say, I think the piece of it that's really important is that the eyewitness account puts out that there was a physical altercation, that there was blood, you know, that he had already started to shoot Mike Brown in the car. So for them to sort of say, oh, it was at close range, and there was blood on Wilson's jacket and on his coat, I mean, on his shirt and all of that. It's like his friend said, yes, you already started to shoot him. He was already injured, and he had his hands up. And then you executed him. You shot him in the head. Let's be real. So it's you know, to try really violence bait Mike Brown further is sort of ridiculous, because the understanding was that there was already physical violence. I mean, I want to not talk forever and ever. And I apologize. This is how I cope. I have to cope with humor. So, you know, because if not, you know, again, people have talked about the whether or not, and I like to say that Ferguson is still a rebellion, still going. That there are arrests every night, that they are still in the streets, the young people have not given up. It might not be tear gas in the same way, but every night people are getting arrested for Mike Brown. And that's real. This is what, day 73, and people are still in the streets and still fired up. And so, again, with the understanding that, you know, this important piece of it around the rebellion in Ferguson, that how and why I say about talking about humor is because, and I'll show you in a minute. Do folks hear about Pumpkin Fest? Well, I'm going to talk about Pumpkin Fest, because I thought that how many people heard about Pumpkin Fest? Keen, New Hampshire, it's important. I'm going to show you pictures of pumpkin fest because Twitter just lit up. And so we have white youth who go to Keene, New Hampshire to smash pumpkins, and black youth who are fighting for their lives in Ferguson, and Twitter lit up to make a comparison because the police did come to Keene, New Hampshire, and everyone's talking about the destruction and how these young people rioted and all of it. But how Twitter, this is October 19th, how Twitter responded was just amazing. So and so I'm going to go to video now of some of the things, some of the actions that happened across the country. So as folks know, so Black Lives Matter and October for Ferguson, October, Organization of Black Struggle, all kinds of folks called for this to be the extension of the week of resistance. And in fact, Black Lives Matter, and we have comrades in other parts of the country that are also having demonstrations. They not just to the October 22nd, but extending to October 26th. And what Betsy described was part of the week of activities. So some of the most significant things that happened was in Atlanta, Georgia. Folks heard about Atlanta? Where folks took over traffic and held down traffic and was able to and I'm gonna get to some videotape of it, where they held traffic. Here is young people taking over major intersection, major interstate highway, and shutting and locking it down. There might be video towards the end of this, but I wanted some of the video and some of the things. This is Tallahassee. This is Dream Defenders that tweeted this out around young people. I want to just go back up. Okay, there we go. The folks doing this in Tallahassee, and this is particularly the Dream Defenders in Florida, doing their action. This is D.C., the days of action in D.C. I want to get to Chattanooga. Oh, let's do New York. So in New York, folks took over Times Square. Marched from Union Square to Times Square. Our comrades also, I know there were comrades in this room that went there and hopefully in the discussion could talk more about it. Again, footage from Times Square. But in Chattanooga, Tennessee, let's see if it's on here. It should be. I have to just scroll down a little further. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, it was like 12 people in their demonstration, but 4 of them got arrested. And they just went and decided to go into the intersection and sit and just hold traffic. It was like 4 people who just said, you know what, we just feel like we're just going to lock down traffic in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they just sat in the street. And they're now, and again, they've gotten lots of play because it was sort of the police escorted them. This is Chattanooga. The police escorted them, thought nothing was going to happen, and it was just badass. They just decided, we're going to sit down. Let's just sit down. And block traffic and are taking bus and arrest. And there's also a national bail fund that's been set up for them because, again, there was no plan for them to do this. Whereas Atlanta was a much more organized, or New York was a much more organized place. All right. I was trying to see if I had, yeah, I think I passed it. But anyway, this is Los Angeles, LA's marches. This is LA. Oh, okay, we're switching mics. All right. All right, I'm going to go to Pumpkin Fest because I really want to show Pumpkin Fest. I think this has become my favorite thing in the world right now is Pumpkin Fest. So, white riots over pumpkins in New Hampshire. Twitter turns it into an epic lesson about Ferguson. So here's Pumpkin Fest. This is the riot cops, the police, everything here for folks smashing pumpkins. Young people, and that is the name of a band, and that became a whole other joke about smashing pumpkins. And people made jokes about it. It's the lyrics, whatever, and smashing pumpkins. Okay, it's a band. Okay, no one gets the reference. It's okay. Thank you, the people that got my reference. So again, this is how I cope. So And this is important because I don't know if people saw the videotape this happened in January. You know, this is, I mean, I guess this didn't happen in January, but even just sort of the understanding about the level of violence. See, there's a videotape that's on YouTube right now circulating here from New York City where a cop was so viciously, someone is fair abatement, someone might have jumped a turnstile. It's $2.50. The police not only like charged in to arrest this person, but they got so wild out, they started kicking each other in the head. People seeing this video, the cops start kicking plainclothes cops in the head because there are 6 people for $2.50, like possible fare abatement. And they're screaming about, you're resisting, when there's 6 to 7 people on top of this young person of color. So again, with the understanding that this happens every day in communities, this is why people responded in the understanding of Keene. So the police were called, obviously. They're smashing things. And young people started to take to Twitter and said, the kids at Keene State threw beer bottles and cans at cops and got arrested. Mike Brown threw his hands up and got caught and caught 6 shots. Folks said, why are they tearing up their own community? Keene Pumpkin Fest. This is funny. I thought it was funny. White people in New Hampshire really need to do something of some self-reflection and regulate their animal impulses in the wake of Keene Pumpkin Fest. Here, folks, this is folks over pumpkins. These are folks on cars. I don't remember in Ferguson there were cars turned over in the street or whatever, but here we go. So folks said, there are no angels. Look at these thug gangbangers in Keene, New Hampshire. Folks then said, where are the leaders in the white community? They need to speak out about Pumpkin Fest. The pumpkin consuming community needs to be loud and clear with condemnation of their behavior. Trust me, I'm an expert. How many of these defiant young youth causing mayhem and destruction come from fatherless homes? Pumpkin riot. And so again, people they threw up this thing, the headless pumpkin, and I said, if white people continue to glorify pumpkin violence in their culture, they deserve the spice latte thug stereotypes. And this one, again, as you can see, 893 retweets, 776 favorites. Like, people just went off. This became and again, wanting to really show, here we go. Folks were like, these are folks you see the smashing pumpkins. Say, this is real. Are those gang signs? Because again, all the condemnation that happened against Mike Brown, that he was in a gang, that he had a gun, all of this and all the actions around the young people. And then they said, of course there could be some good of this. I think, if nothing else, this will start a much-needed dialogue on pumpkin relations in America. Breaking, Don Lemon is hosting a CNN town hall, Pumpkin in America. Because again, as you know, there was at least 3 summits around racism. And then someone said, I don't see gore, okay? And that, I mean, again, I won't show you the videotape of this. And again, you see all the police. This is a video of all of the cops and all of the destruction and people turning over cars. But again, this is New Hampshire. But I think what's really important was that it just really, I mean, again, sort of I look at this more about where people get their news at this point. It's Twitter. It's that we might not, even something, CNN has had to respond to this now. CNN has responded to Pumpkin Fest, comparing it to Ferguson. Because people in general took the time to say, let's make the comparison of how white youth are, and again, everything that people just really raised, I thought was really important, was about the fact that they were not called thugs, they were not called animals, they were not demonized in that way. They were young people that got out of hand. There was no one killed. But again, if this had been young people of color, people would have been dead. And that Twitter took to the air that even made bourgeois media have to respond to it. Because CNN, again, as people remember, got surrounded because of their horrible coverage of Ferguson. So anyway, with this said, comrades, I just, the next step, I guess, at this point in time for folks is that there are more demonstrations that are being called. There are still conference calls happening. And again, wanting to remind comrades that here in New York City, most importantly, we still have Eric Gardner's grand jury, I was going to say farce coming up. And again, you know, that we know that we're going to Foley Square next day. Am I right, Tony? It's 4 o'clock.
That's what I remember.
4 o'clock next day, whatever the verdict is, that people are going to be responding in Foley Square around Eric Gardner. Anyway, on to more demonstrations. Down with Pumpkin Fest! And up with the youth of Ferguson.